I see a lot of functional ingredients coming through saying we want to add this because we know it supports this function in the pet and we want to include that. It's great that all companies I work with, pet health is their first and foremost concern. So, what can we do to support these wonderful creatures that bring us so much joy every day?
Welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast brought to you by Wise Genetics. My name is Jan Sukodolski. I'm here professor at Texas A&M University, and I'm trying to bring you the latest insights and discussions into the pet food science industry. So get ready to expand your knowledge and stay ahead with today's episodes. And today's guest is Carolyn Kennedy, who is a consultant that designs or helps companies to design and create new diets. And welcome, Caroline. It's my really pleasure to host you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, Caroline, our goal of this is really to have a nice discussion, to learn as much as possible from you. So I usually let our guests introduce themselves. So how did you start in the pet food industry? What is your career? And so that also we learn about you and also maybe our audience can understand how some of those pathways develop over time.
Yes, thank you. So I am the director of CK Nutrition. It's a consulting group in the United States for pet food, but we have clients around the world. And my journey into pet food is very interesting. I started out studying human nutrition and then went to work at a pet food plant in the UK, and I absolutely fell in love with it. That was over 20 years ago when pet food was really changing from something that we just pick up and feed to our dogs to something that we really think about as dogs become more part of the family. So I felt like I got into the industry right at the time when functional ingredients and really thinking about the marketing of pet food more than just how does it taste was coming into play. And after working in the UK for a while, I moved to the United States and kept on consulting for the company in England, and then quickly was working full-time consulting for companies around the world on formulations as well as pet food regulations and importing and exporting and everything to do with pet food.
Great. And so now you are consulting for yourself or how big is your company?
Yes, we have a small team. It's me and 4 employees, and they handle the state registrations for a lot of different companies. That's unique to the United States, where anywhere you sell a pet food, you have to register it in that state. So my employees are handling the state registrations, and then I'm doing label reviews and formulations, and we're all doing import permits as well.
For more than 20 years, BioOrigin manufactures high-quality yeast-based ingredients through a sustainable biotechnological process, guaranteeing full traceability from the crop to the bowl. Through specialization in the fermentation process, BioOrigin brings the right solution for specific nutritional, palatability, and health appeals, such as gut health, immune system, skin health, weight control, and more. BioOrigin's products are natural origin, non-GMO, and certified sustainable by Bonsucro. BioOrigin is your partner for high-quality, yeast-based ingredients to add value to pet foods worldwide. Learn more at bioorigin.net.
Our focus of today's episode will be really to understand if you want to sell pet food, what do you need to know about selling pet food in the United States, about regulations, importing labels. But maybe before we come into the details of this, let me ask you maybe like a practical thing. So if a company says, oh, we want to start selling pet foods, do they usually have already ideas or you also help them formulating them? So how does that whole process in that as an average kind of client work? So do you come from the formulation and then do regulation, or what is kind of the whole process and how long does it take?
Yes, that is a great question. It might take me a little while to answer it, but there are. So normally a company would come to me and say, we want to develop a new pet food, and this is our vision. This is what we're looking to bring to the industry. And then I'll work with them to get their vision into a formulation. And mostly I'm focusing on the nutrient profile. I'm focusing on the ingredients, how that will work in the format that they want, whether it's extruded kibble or wet can or something completely different, freeze dried or air dried. So we bring their vision into a formulation. And then we work on getting this costed and finding the right manufacturing partner. And at the same time, we might start thinking about, well, what kind of marketing claims can you make? And what kind of marketing claims do you want to make? How can we get there? And that's where the packaging design starts to come in. So right now, we're probably at around month 3 from when we started. Once we have the formulation set, we know that we have the nutrient profile we want. We know that we have the marketing claims that we want, as well as the ingredients to and guarantees to support those marketing claims. That's where you start thinking about, okay, let's get this into production. Let's make sure it tastes good. Let's do some lab testing to make sure we're meeting all of the correct nutrients. And then we would start working on, let's roll out the state registration. So state registrations seem like a lot of work, but it's something that my team can do confidently about a month before you're actually for sale. So the entire time frame, I would say, from actually having our first conversation and discussing the vision to getting those state registrations out, it could be 12 months. That's working very quickly, making sure that we are on the manufacturer to get those trials made and set up, and then working on the packaging in the meantime too. So 12 months just from start to finish is a push, but it's possible. And the state registrations need to be done just before your product is going to be for sale in that state.
Well, that's actually faster than I would have thought it would be. That's good.
It doesn't always happen that fast. There can be a lot of timelines where it goes slower because maybe the costing isn't quite where we wanted, or the manufacturing facility is very busy, the time of year doesn't quite work out. So 12 months is an ideal time frame.
Could I ask maybe a question about the vision? You said sometimes companies come to you with a vision. How, in your experience, how often is this a realistic vision that is actually being able to really put into a final product, or how long is this part discussion? But I could see that sometimes you have some visions are very maybe not realistic, correct?
Some visions are not realistic, but usually I can advise on how we can get it to be realistic. So I like to lead companies in a way that says, I understand what you're looking for, and we can't do exactly that, but here's what we can do.
No, that's very good. And so is it nowadays the push more for novel ingredients, novel functional ingredients, novel diet types? What is kind of the big marketing area now that companies approach you with those new visions?
I see a lot of functional ingredients coming through saying we want to add this because we know it supports this function in the pet and we want to include that. It's great that all companies I work with, pet health is their first and foremost concern. So, what can we do to support these wonderful creatures that bring us so much joy every day? And then after that, I would say it's more to do with possibly the format. Are you looking for something that's going to be a little bit different? Freeze dried and air dried were something that was fairly new a few years ago into the pet food industry, and that keeps growing. And then, but now there's also this new way of how can we personalize this a little bit more? So I see a trend towards personalization and just the business to consumer interaction. What happens with what is the company doing for the consumer? All pet food companies are using, the ingredients have to be approved for use in pet food. So you can't just go pick a new ingredient and decide to use it in pet food. It actually has to be approved for use. But how can we differentiate our company to give the consumer the feeling that we're speaking to them each day?
And so how does it afterwards, the path from this vision, which is great, and now you need to really follow these regulations. And so what are really some of the major hurdles in regulations? Let's put it this way. That's kind of is already a big stepping stone for those new approaches and those new visions.
Yes, there are a lot of hurdles. So, number one is your marketing messages. And marketing is not just what you have on the package, it's also what's on your website. What are you saying about the product? So, the biggest challenge I see for companies is understanding the difference between a structure function claim, like omega 3 fatty acids help support skin and coat health, or antioxidants to support immune function, or gut health supporting ingredients such as prebiotics, probiotics, or postbiotics to support gut health. Those are structure function claims, and those are okay. Those are allowed. There's maybe certain nutrients that you have to guarantee in your guaranteed analysis to support those claims, but those are allowed. But a lot of companies I find don't understand the difference between a structure function claim and a drug claim. So a drug claim would be something like helps stop itchy skin or helps to give your dog, I don't want to bring up the stool, but helps improve stool quality. Those are bordering on the drug claims, and that's what's not allowed. So I find that trying to educate companies on let's talk about the differences between these two and how you can say one but not the other and why. That's the biggest challenge I see from a regulatory perspective.
Is for a structure and function claim, do you actually have to do a study, or is it an accepted claim if you put ingredients that have been studied well?
Yes, usually there are many that are accepted, but as a company, you want to make sure that the amount that you're including or guaranteeing is enough to have the desired benefit. And by that, there's a lot of white papers that can be reviewed, peer reviewed research on amount of omega-3 fatty acids or prebiotics that can be included to have the desired benefit. I think it's just a good idea for a company to have that knowledge. It's not something that a state regulator would typically ask about.
Okay. But for the marketing claim, I think you would advise that strongly to have some
Yeah.
data. And so once this part is done, obviously comes the ingredients, correct? And then it
Yes.
becomes probably also like a cost question too. So how is that usually, how does those discussions usually go?
Well, almost every time I create a formula, we're going with the best possible formula. So meeting the vision that the company has developed and then also including the nutrients that support the nutrient profile and the desired claims. And quite often there's, can we get it a little bit cheaper? And so that comes up a lot. And that's where you get into versions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the formulation, just to try to bring those costs down a little bit so it fits into the costing profile. And often we're not taking anything out that's going to change the nutrient profiles drastically. They still need to meet the requirements, but maybe just changing the ingredients around a little bit to get some cost savings here and there.
Let me ask you a question about regulations. So we talked about regulations. Can you go back a little bit to the state regulations? Because that seems something that I was not aware of. I thought US is US. So how strict are different states, and what is a typical difference between one state from another one, or is it the same regulation in most cases?
So all of the states will be following the AFCO, the American Association of Food Control Officials official publication rules for pet food
Mhm.
regulations. They're all following it, but that doesn't mean they're all enforcing it. So some states have people that review labels in the state, and they will diligently go through each label that's submitted and make sure that it follows the regulations. Other states may not have that capacity in their state offices, so they're not reviewing the labels to the same extent. So there are a handful of states where you may get letters like, this should be revised. It's not worded correctly, or it's needs to be improved a little bit. If there is an outright drug claim, a state has the ability to deny the registration of that product. So certain states will review a lot more labels and in more detail than others, but all states will be looking for products that are out for sale and have not been registered. So saying that, oh, we're just going to register them when we're found is not the right way to go about launching a pet food. The rule is that if you're selling in this state, you should register your food. There are 3 states where no registration is required. So anyone can sell pet food in Alaska, Hawaii, or Nevada and not go through any kind of registrations. And as long as they meet the nutrient requirements, follow the regulations, it's fine. There's no registration there. But I don't get a lot of companies that sell a lot into Alaska and Hawaii yet. So
Okay. But is it usually advisable to start with all state regulations, or is it just some companies start with one state and then expand, or what is what would you think is the best practice?
that is a great question. It really depends on who you're selling your products to. For example, if you're selling your products online through one of the online platforms, Amazon or Chewy or anything else that has nationwide availability, you should really be registered in all states because you could get an order from anywhere and you
Mhm.
want to get orders from everywhere. So selling online should be registered in all states. Same with going with national chains. If you're selling into one of the major pet retailers, you want to be registered in all states so you have the freedom to go into all of their stores. But if you're only going to be selling online through your own platform at first, then maybe you do just want to start with a few handful of states and register as you need them. The state registrations are costly. So for one product, the fee's around $4,000 in all of the states. It doesn't quite multiply each time you do it, but it certainly increases. So if you're not sure what states you're selling in at first, then it might make sense just to choose the ones where you think you're going to have the first sales.
Yeah, that's a very important consideration. Let me also ask about importing, because you mentioned before imports, pet
Mhm.
foods. How often does that happen that some companies import pet food into the US? And what is the regulations we need to be aware of?
It happens quite often because there are many wonderful manufacturing facilities that make great pet foods outside of the US. So, for an American company or any company to bring their pet food into the United States, there's a few different requirements that they need. They need an FDA facility registration, and the facility has to meet the FDA guidelines on the Food Safety Modernization Act, and it needs to be registered with the FDA. There's also an import permit requirement. So USDA is making sure that any animal origin ingredients that come into the US have an import permit. This is the same for pet food, or if you were to go to another country and try to bring back some kind of, wonderful salami or Iberico ham from Spain or something, you should have an import permit for that ingredient. So there's the FDA registration, the USDA import permit, and these are renewed on an FDA's every 2 years, and USDA, the import permit, has to be renewed every year. And then there's also making sure that your label meets the AFCO guidelines. I noticed that with a lot of companies in other countries, such as Europe and the EU, the labeling format is different. So they either have to create new bags or create stickers for their bags so that it meets the AFCO requirements. It is something that I can certainly help with. It is possible, but it just requires a little bit more work. You can't just send your food over and put it on the shelf.
How long do you think this whole process would take on average?
It depends on how many products you have and how many stickers or bags you have to redo, but the FDA registration doesn't take very long, usually within about a week. That's done. And then the USDA import permit can take up to 2 months to have the import permit issued. And with the FDA registration, obviously the facility has to be very aware of what's required by the FDA and make sure they have all those requirements in place.
We also know that there's going to be a new labeling system in the US, right? Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that one? How much that's going to affect, or how much changes do you expect over the next few years until this new labeling system
Yes.
is enforced?
So this is the new pet nutrition facts, which will replace the guaranteed analysis and hopefully will make it easier for consumers to understand. There aren't a lot of changes. The only change that I've noticed that might just take a little bit of getting used to is that we used to declare crude fiber on the label. And now we'll be declaring dietary fiber, which is much more known to humans and makes a lot more sense. Crude fiber is very old anyway. But the challenge is that that's not included on a lot of the standard testing at the labs that are used to test the guaranteed analysis for pet food. So I think the consideration for pet food companies is that the testing might become a little bit more costly and that they're now going to have to add this additional requirement to the label. But other than that, I think the label makes a lot more sense. And companies have 6 years up until 2030 to have that new label in place. So I think the key is to be prepared and start making those changes sooner rather than later.
I would assume that also at the moment there's not many laboratories who offer this new analysis, or you see this as a hurdle at the moment.
There are labs that do offer it, yes. So the labs that I use regularly do offer it. It's just an added cost. It's
Okay.
unfortunately it's not a cheap test to do. So it does add a couple $100s to the testing.
Doesn't sound too bad, I guess.
Corbion's Algaprine DHA-P3, the algae-based omega-3 DHA to boost brain, cognition, immune system, and well-being. Adding it to pet food is easier than ever. Cut out the middle fish and go straight to the natural source to enjoy all the benefits of omega-3 DHA. It's better for the planet with zero impact on the ocean and low carbon footprint, and it's easy to use. The highly concentrated biomass powder is suitable for multiple applications. Learn more at corbion.com.
Another question I have about this import, especially when we speak about novel ingredients, right? There's now human-grade diets, insect-based diets. How does it differ between different countries, and especially when you afterwards want to bring it to the US?
Yes, so human grade is something that you can only have a human grade product if the facility is located in the United States. So you can't bring in a human grade product from another country right now. That might change in the future. And when it comes to insect proteins, as long as the insect protein is defined in the AAFCO official publication, you can use it. So right now, those are very limited to dried black soldier fly larvae and the oil as well as the cricket meal, I believe, is in tentative definition for certain ones. But it's something that you can use, and it just depends on whether or not it's approved for use in pet food.
So this is really a big area to navigate, right? So we need
Yes.
people like you.
The regulations can be a very big area to navigate, and I think companies are very open to the fact that, okay, we might not be able to check all the boxes, but we can check a lot of the boxes and we can compromise. And the United States is a very large market. So sometimes it just takes some discussions and some work to be able to get the product to a place where it is suitable for sale here.
So what do you see the big future? What is the big areas do you believe that especially companies that want to go, the vision, right? But also you think the hurdle's going to be larger. So
Yes. I think the biggest area continues to be functional ingredients, where companies are looking for what ingredients can we add that will support pet health. That is always something that's first and foremost in companies' minds. And then secondly, like I said, I think we'll be looking for that customer interaction. How can we really keep them hooked on our brand, and what can we do to keep them hooked, but also making sure we're not going above and beyond the structure function claims and getting into any drug claim territory ever. So, I mean, ideally my dog is 8 and I would do anything to help him live longer, but I know from a scientific background that that's just not the way it is for dogs. So there's really no miracle that can be out there.
And from a regulation point of view, where you see that maybe there's going to be some more like tightenings, AAFCO is going to maybe change, or like maybe the FDA is going to maybe be more, more like precise. Do you see any kind of concerns there that there's going to be some complications? Or
there could be a difference in how labels are reviewed. So right now they're reviewed on a state-by-state level, as I was saying, but they are looking to make a central body to review all the labels. I'm not sure if that will happen or when, but I feel that even if there was a central body, it might make it more determined that a pet food label has to follow these guidelines, and we can't have those products out there on the market that are making drug claims. So in a way, it might help tighten the regulations. And what the regulations are trying to do is to make it so that the end consumer, the pet food parent, is able to understand the label. There's nothing misleading on there. It's not trying to treat or improve a disease condition. So if we were able to ensure that all pet food labels sold in the US were truthful and not misleading, I think that would be a very good thing. But there's always going to be companies out there that maybe don't know the rules quite as well as I do.
Great. So that's why we need you.
It's time for our famous 3. At Allura Pets, our commitment to biotechnological innovations empowers you to craft superior products that redefine pet wellness standards. Whether enhancing nutrient bioavailability, promoting gut health, or boosting immunity, our science-backed solutions give your formulations a competitive edge in the pet market. Trust Allura Pets to deliver scientifically proven ingredients that elevate your portfolio to new heights. Visit us at www.allura.bio/pets to learn more.
And thank you so much. It was very, very enlightening. Often it's really good to have those insights from the other side of the story, not as an end consumer like myself. So I would like to kind of summarize or sum up our discussion with maybe like a little bit out of this box, question to you. What makes somebody successful?
Wow, that is a great question. I would say sticking to your vision as much as you can, but being open to what you need to do it correctly,
Great.
and really being passionate about it. I think when someone's passionate about their products, it just makes it so much easier to sell.
That's a great advice. Thank you so much, Caroline. So with this, I want to end our newest episodes. So another episode of the Pet Food Science Podcast presented to you by Wisenetics. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Caroline, for being with us. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. If you enjoyed today's episode, please sign up, leave us a review. Your feedback is very important to us. So until next time, this is Jan Podolski from the Pet Food Science Podcast signing off. Goodbye.